Hello, welcome to this Greytalk. We are extremely happy to have with us Eddie Mukibi, Nina Wolf, and Malte Result from Slow Food. And I must confess that this is one of the first talks where I have been so curious just by reading the title. The title of the Greytalk is Imagine All the People Having Access to Good, Clean, and Fair Food, How Slow Food is Changing Our Relationship to Food, a human right. And having all of us, by definition, in Grey Cells, we work with the Sustainable Development Goals, and we really think that the beauty of this and the value added of these goals is that they are interlinked one to each other. And when you see, and when you read SDG 2, no hunger, you really see that it's linked to all the other SDGs in a very, very strong way. We were optimistic and we were extremely happy when the SDGs were adopted. But apparently when reading the bibliography and the latest news preparing this session, I realized that we are really far from reaching the SDGs goals and SDG targets. So, and also that the task and the objectives have become enormous. We are reaching 7.8 billion people in the planet. So when I read in the title that was proposed for this session, imagine all the people and having slow food, a value added to get it to all the people, I'm really curious, and I'm sure that all the people who will be watching this session will appreciate it. So without further ado, I will ask Francesca, who is member of our executive committee, but also member of Slow Food Switzerland, to present our speakers today. Please, Francesca.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, and really delighted to greet our speakers today. And we put together a panel of complementary voices that will really lead us through thought-provoking statements and positions around food and our relationship to food, and how food will be also dealt with in the future. So first of all, I'm delighted to introduce Eddie Mukibi, Vice President of Slow Food International. Eddie lives and works in Uganda, is an agronomist, a food and agriculture educator, a social entrepreneur, and the executive director of Slow Food Uganda. Among his various achievements, Eddie played a critical role in the development of the Slow Food Gardens in Africa project. And we look forward to hearing more about that, Eddie. Throughout his career, he has focused his efforts on developing ecological and organic agriculture and food systems, both in rural and urban contexts in Africa. And he was named among the inaugural 50 Next list of people shaping the future of gastronomy. Also with Slow Food is Nina Wolf, President of Slow Food Germany and member of the enlarged governance group of Slow Food International. Nina studied philosophy and law in Germany and France, and graduated with a PhD on the integration of international fisheries and environmental law. Nina worked for various non-governmental organizations on fisheries and biodiversity conservation, and became an advocacy expert defending civil society interests. And currently, the focus of her work with Slow Food Germany is food policy. Nina speaks up for a comprehensive and sustainable transformation of the food system and for everybody's right to good, clean, and fair food. Our third distinguished guest is Malte Result, a thematic advisor for Swiss Church Aid. Malte is an agricultural engineer who's been working for more than 25 years in different positions in international cooperation in the global South and North. Food in the whole cycle from production to consumption has always been at the core of his professional and private interests. He thinks that the deterioration of food diversity is a major threat to humankind, and he will explain how to tackle that. So having introduced our three panelists, I leave them now in the able hands of Manuela for her to take us through today's great talk. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. The rules of the game of this great talk are extremely simple. If you have a question or a comment anytime, please write it in a few words in the discussion table that is on the right of your screen. And after the presentations of our three main panelists, we, of course, will take on board your own comments. And we also welcome the interaction among the panelists, because I know, I can already say that Malta does not fully agree with everything that our slow food representatives will share with us. So having said that, immediately, Eddie, the floor is yours for introducing us to what is slow food. I understand it's much more than food. It's a philosophy of life. Eddie, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Manuela. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be on the Greytalks, and I'm happy to introduce slow food as a whole subject about food as a global food movement, and also as a global grassroots food movement. So I will definitely talk about our approach as slow food on top of what we know as a global movement of food activists, a global association of food people who want to change the food system to a good, clean, and fair one. On top of that, Slow Food is a grassroots organization that is working with the common people, with the local small-scale farmers, with the local artisan fishermen, that is working with the cooks, rural women in the communities. And our basic unit of organization is called the food community. A food community is a small group of people with a common objective, and they agree to change the food system from within their locality by meeting and working together and selecting which key area of the food system they want to handle. So they start from identifying and analyzing the challenges they have with the local food system. If it's about market for agroecological products, they come up and create a slow food community that is addressing that challenge. If the challenge is about preserving an indigenous food species at risk of extinction, this group of men, women, children, young and old, come together, and irrespective of their physical or gender differences, because in slow food, with the spirit of inclusive, these are put aside and we work together towards a common goal of changing the food system towards a more good, clean, and fair one. So this is our basic unit of organization, and Slow Food is run, our network is run through the network of these communities, which are connected as nodes from one place to another, and they communicate, they talk to each other. There is this kind of flexibility in listening to each other. And at the end of the day, the main goal is to change the food system to make sure that all humans on the planet have access to good, clean, and fair food. The point, all people, is really, really important, because I come from a part of the world where the picture which represents the continent where I come from, the common picture which people have known through the mainstream media, the common picture which people have seen all over, is a picture of a hungry child, a hungry African child. And there are so many people who have come to the continent thinking that we can take in whatever that comes in as long as it looks like food. This is wrong, and Slow Food actually takes this point seriously, and that's why slow food in Africa, the global and also at the global level, respects the fact, the identity of being a grassroots organization, to work with the common people to build the food system from within, to give the power to those people to build the system which we want. As Africans, we build our own systems through the Slow Food Network. We connect with each other. We break the colonial barriers of the boundaries, the challenges of communication. We, as young people in Africa, one of the youngest populations in the world is found in Africa. So we identify so many innovative ways through this Slow Food Network to communicate to each other, to start up initiatives with the communities, to break this barrier and build a sustainable, resilient, fair, and human rights-based food system that is working for us. And this is the approach of slow food, working with the local people, building from scratch, building from the communities, looking at what is really lacking in the community, and then we work together to change this. We work together to build this. Slow food, through these communities, we work in a network, but following 3 strategic pillars or strategic objectives through which we want to change the food system. The first strategic objective is one of the biggest in the world of slow food. And we believe that it's really, really important to preserve biological and cultural diversity. If we want to build a better food system, if we want to change the food system to a more good, clean, and fair one, we need to start by preserving the biological and cultural diversity. This is so close to the people, it's so close to our ecosystems, it's so close to the nature, to the planet on which we survive, and we need to work together to identify what we are losing to save that, but also to protect what we have not yet lost and that what we have not, that has not yet been threatened. Slow food works through a number of grassroots initiatives like community-based biodiversity and conservation projects, which we call Presidia, the Arc of Taste, which is a catalog of knowledge and information about products at risk of extinction. Earth markets, many farmers, they grow a lot of different ecological diverse products, and they cannot find a market to sustain their families. But Slow Food Network locally builds these small farmer-led markets where local women, local communities, they bring their diverse products and meet the consumers, they meet the public, and they exchange knowledge about the products, and then we can save these products later. So that is briefly about the slow food work on biodiversity, including saving seeds, saving breeds, animal welfare, the coffee, working with the coffee world, which is full of diversity, and many other activities which we do at the grassroots level. Again, another strategic pillar or strategic objective of slow food is education. Education is really, really important because me as an educator, I understand that there is we never have enough knowledge about our food. We never have enough knowledge about our ecosystem. Ecosystems change, food changes, food is dynamic, and food is very complicated. So people need knowledge, especially young people, about their food system. We need to learn how to manage the ecosystems. We need to learn how to manage short value chains for food. So Slow Food organizes different educational activities. One of the biggest education activities globally in the world of slow food are food educations, food gardens. This, in Africa, we started the 10,000 Gardens in Africa project for so many reasons. One, to rebuild the African traditional communities, which never lacked food before the Green Revolution. Two is to protect land, African land, from the encroachment by the large-scale industrial production, monocultures. Three is to rebuild food sovereignty for African communities to decide what food we need to produce, which seeds we want, how we want to take care of our land, but most importantly, to strengthen food education activities, to transfer knowledge from the living encyclopedia of old African farmers to the young generation. The knowledge about food, the knowledge about environment, the knowledge about our biodiversity, the knowledge about our diets and nutrition and cultural aspects regarding our food system. So the gardens, there are more than 3,000 slow food gardens, educational gardens across the continent in schools and communities, and we still develop more thanks to the donors who help us realize this big dream of rejuvenating African agriculture and liberating it from the hands of the corporate entities which want to control the African land and the resources. The third strategic pillar of the third strategic objective of slow food, as I'm concluding, is about advocacy. We do a lot of grassroots work as slow food. We do a lot of activities, but again, there are common laws and policies which are being drafted by under the influence of the agribusiness corporations, and they are dumped to the African governments to frustrate the efforts of the agroecology movement on the continent, to such that they can push for GMOs, they can push for monoculture, they can push for land grabbing. So we realize that slow food, we need a way to talk to the public and private institutions. We need a way to talk to the governments. We need a way to talk to the private entities to change their approach towards food. And the right approach is with the slow food movement. The right approach is with agroecology. The right approach is with the traditional African farming systems. And this is what we propel as when we meet the governments, when we meet the institutions. So we do a lot of local grassroots advocacy activities with the local governments, but also regional, like I personally have been participating in the African regional food policy discussions and debates, bringing in our approach as slow food. I've also participated in a lot of national debates, meeting members of parliament to stop the genetic engineering bill, which was just meant to promote GMOs, not to regulate. And we succeeded because it has to be reviewed and to our satisfaction. So we have also international advocacy programs as slow food, both at a regional bloc level, like at the EU level, and also African Union level, and also global food campaign. This is how slow food works, but we work through this basic unit of organization, which is our family, and in slow food, this is a community, the basic unit of an organization, and this represents our grassroots approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eddie, for this convincing, well, we will see how convincing it was, but convincing presentation, at least as far as you are concerned. Nina, you have the floor, because I know that you have many complementary views and ideas to share with us from the slow food perspective. Please, Nina, you have the floor.
Yes, so thank you very much. And thank you, Eddie, for already introducing slow food so well and introducing our first and foremost objective to change the food system and also our advocacy approach. I very much share that, and as you know, we're both passionate fighters for changing the food system. And over the years, I adopted a motto for doing this, and that is tell the truth and trust the people. And this is actually a deep belief that when people know about the facts and know about the negative effects that economic activities can have and about the injustice this brings about, then you can trust in the human beings to bring about change. And well, let's see. Today we present you a little bit of facts, a little bit of what's wrong in this food world, and perhaps you will all join us and change the world together with us. So my basic assertion for today is that our current global food system makes many people sick. And in many respects, this is unfair. Well, in theory, there is enough food produced worldwide to feed everyone appropriately. But as you know, in fact, humanity is suffering from what experts call a triple burden of malnutrition. This means that we have 3 different types of malnutrition in parallel. There's undernutrition, there's overnutrition, and there are micronutrition deficiencies. Malnutrition in different forms affects every country, whether developing or developed, whether poor or rich, there's malnutrition everywhere in the world. We all know about the sad facts that hundreds of millions of people suffer from hunger. Thousands of children die from the consequences of undernutrition every day. And this, although we have enough food in theory for all people. Obviously, too little food makes people either sick or put their lives at risk. This is dramatic, as the numbers of humans suffering from hunger are rising again, in complete contrast to what Alejandro mentioned before, to SDG 2. So the goal of the world community to eliminate hunger by 2030. But people turn sick as well when they have too much food or high quantities of food of low quality. This kind of food leads to a variety of chronic diseases. At the moment, there are 1.9 billion overweight adults in the world, including more than 650 million who are obese, which is in fact a severe disease. In addition to obesity, strongly affecting the young as well, there are other diseases like high blood pressure, cardiovascular diseases, fatty livers, diabetes, at an early age even, and diet-related cancers. And all this is spreading mainly in the northern part of the world, but not only. And this is a huge burden for our societies and for our national economies even. So this used to be a first world problem in the past. At present, the global food system is dominated by large corporations that produce, manufacture, distribute, and sell foods all over the world, and who reach out to the global south. Eddie already mentioned this. And there are only 10 international big food corporations dominating the market. So this is a really high concentration. And these 10 companies have a combined turnover of more than $1 billion per day. So this is diabolic in a way. During the last 30 to 40 years, the global food system has brought about the so-called Western diet, a diet characterized by an increase in refined cereals, animal source foods, red meat, caloric sweeteners added to drinks, ultra-processed foods, rich in saturated fats, salt, and sugars. And also things the world really doesn't need, like sweet and savory snacks, packaged, pre-cooked, and ready-to-eat foods. And today, about 3/4 of the food sold have undergone a serious transformation process before they get to our tables. However, the quality of food that has been delivered by this system is very poor. What makes these highly processed products so attractive to customers and shapes their eating patterns is a combination of omnipresent advertising aimed particularly at the younger generation. Imagine that in my country, every day a child is exposed to 15 advertisements in social media, radio, television, and all targeted 15 food advertisements. So this is huge, and it doesn't leave them without any effect. So this comes at a price, and this shapes the consuming patterns of customers, the eating patterns, and then there are other factors like the seductive taste created by industry, the constant availability of these foods, the convenience, just have to open and eat, and also a price that puts healthy and fresh food at shame. So it's so much cheaper, and this is in my opinion, really a source of huge inequality, because the price of these industry products is so low. Unhealthy diets are often tied to poverty, and well, this creates inequality. And over the past decades, consumers were more and more expected to make the right food choices and to adopt green and healthy lifestyles. But experience and research has shown that this expectation overestimates the broad mass of consumers. Many consumers find it hard to change to more sustainable eating habits. Some of the barriers they face, I already mentioned, the price, a lack of information, the issue of identifying sustainable foods, and the limited availability of sustainable foods in their usual shopping surroundings and in their canteens, be it in companies or in schools or in hospitals. That's why slow food promotes the concept of enabling food environments, and thus to change the structural factors that drive food choices. So away from the highly processed industrial products towards sustainably grown and biologically diverse, fresh and healthy food. Now, what is a healthy diet? Is it a diet that is mainly good for you and me, for my health, for your health? Well, not in our opinions, since slow food is about good, clean, and fair food for all. So when the production of food is stressing or even overstraining the environment, remember, for instance, that industrial agriculture and meat production are significant contributors to climate change and to water pollution, then it's not clean and not fair to those other humans who are entitled to enjoy a healthy life and environment. And of course, it's not fair to future generations, as we all know. The challenge of the next few years will be to ensure a healthy diet for a world population of estimated 10 billion people by 2050. An important point of reference to ensure this is the Planetary Health Diet, which was presented by the International Eat Lancet Commission in 2019. The basic idea of this is moderation, less for more, less choice, a little bit less freedom for more justice for everybody and the fair chance to feed the world in 2050. So reduce the amount of calories, more than half the consumption of animal products, and double that of fruit, vegetables, legumes, and nuts. This is how the growing world population can be fed healthily and the survival of the planet can be ensured. In our future diets, plants should thus have priority. They should in fact dominate our meals. And this could be very positive for biological diversity. Huge areas of land could be freed from monocultures for animal feed production and made available for a diverse plantation of crops for human consumption. So, to sum up, in order to guarantee that everybody has access to good, clean, and fair food, we need a profound transformation of the way food is produced, processed, traded, and consumed from farm to fork. And this transformation of the food system should ideally result in fat-enabling food environments and in more plant-based diets. Thank you. And over to Marta, I guess.
Thank you very much, Nina. It was extremely clear and again, as convincing as Eddie's. But I will turn now to Malte because I would like to know if he is as convinced as it seems we all are, because all this is common sense. Malte, what is your vision here?
Yeah, thank you, Manuela, and thank you, Eddie and Nina, for your positions. Just to also point out, Alejandro, I'm not a member of Slow Food. You could call me a moral supporter. No problem. But I'm not a member. I'm working for Swiss Church Aid, and we are both advocacy and project organizations. So I would like to make some points. Maybe as the last speaker, there's always a challenge because practically everything has been said, but not by me. So hopefully I'm not going to repeat all the good things that Eddie and Nina already pointed out, but maybe I can add something more. So first of all, my observation, and I will try to even avoid a term that Eddie and Nina used very, very frequently, food system. Because when I studied agriculture kind of 3 months ago, 25 years ago, nobody spoke about food system. That was a term that was not even coined. I think it's 5 years ago. And that's funny enough how this term entered very much and very, very fast the international discussion. And I didn't know that slow food also is very familiar with using this term. But anyway, so let me point out 3 observations that I have about global food cycles, habits, and so on and so on. And some of these are already mentioned, but I would like to nevertheless talk about the 3 very briefly. We were talking already about the uniformization of food habits throughout the world. And this is really something very interesting. And I would even call this, just to provoke the Italians here, it's a kind of pizzification. You can also call it the McDonaldization. And this is very interesting for slow food, because if I'm not mistaken, the first opening of the branch of McDonald's in Rome was one of these founding myths of slow food in Italy, isn't it? But anyway, so we have this uniformization, and this is really something what we should be very aware of, because it has a lot of negative side effects. And then, Nina, you were talking about that already. It's a corporatization of international food production and so on and so on. And for us being here in Switzerland, I would like to call this the nestification of the whole food circle. And the last but not least point, and it is very much interlinked to the 2 already mentioned one, is the westernization. And you were also already pointed that out, Nina. But I would like to stress that point very specifically, because it has a lot to do, and Eddie, later on I will come back to with the question to you, an African, because this westernization has a lot to do with this uniformization, because it's this Western form of diets that are going to be just exported. So it's a kind of neo-colonial phenomenon that we have. So after 500 years of Western export of our culture, religion, now we also export our form of food. And the corporations, these 10, I didn't do the research, Nina, but I'm very sure that most of them are Western corporations that are, so like Nestle, but all the other ones too. So this is something what I would like to point out, because basically we are here about a power question. This is very much a power question. And so I was happy to hear that Slow Food is doing advocacy work, because I think this is something what we have to do at the end, because now I will talk about food system. What we as HEX, but also other NGOs were very, very concerned and worried was a big influence of international cooperation in the whole process of the UN Food System Summit last year. And this shows that they are even entering the UN system, corporations, by their needs. So the whole system, Food System Summit was even kind of endorsed by the World Economic Forum by a talk to Antonio Guterres. So this is really something what I think needs to be tackled also from civil society actors. And it should be tackled also from government actors, but we see a kind of absence of action in that sense. So it was also mentioned already, but I would like to make that point strong again about the decrease of diversity. And this is really something what I see just in my environment, now living in Switzerland, but also when I was living abroad, that we have a kind of at least a double decrease of diversity. And this is first of all the agrobiodiversity. Eddie was already mentioning it. Just this is the only figure that I'm going to mention here, but 75% of all the food produced by now is based on 12 plant species and 5 animal species. And this is just dangerous. This is just from an agronomic point of view, it is very dangerous that we are relying so much on so few species. But, and this was very interesting when I was living in Southeast Asia, I was provoked as a European about the diversity of what is considered food. And this is also something what has a lot to do with this westernization of food culture, because what we consider food is exactly a very narrow branch of animals and plant species. And this is getting worse and worse. And so this is also the diversity of what we consider food is getting narrower and narrower and has to be, in any case, also addressed to divert this or convert this situation. And what I have seen, for example, now, for example, I was working in the Brazilian Amazon region with indigenous people. And so this is really interesting how much they got under pressure through all these developments, because their food system, now I use this term, is very much like characterized by exactly the opposite of this international development. So they are highly diverse diets. They are relying on very, very small structures, and they have a very non-westernized food tradition. And so these communities, they got very much under pressure from all sides, and this needs to be also addressed in a way. And so I would like to come to an end from with my short input here, just to have time also for discussion. So I think what we need in any case is just protection. We need to protect communities from this international influence. We have to see how to enhance self-determination, that people are able to defend their cultural habits of food production, and so on and so on. And this was also already mentioned by Eddie, and this is some of these very, very important work, how to guard seed varieties on the ground with the people. And so if, Manuela, you allow me, I would pose a question to Eddie. And this is a provocative question, because since I'm not here from Slow Food, I was wondering, what should I advocate for? Lame food or limping food? I don't know. Anyway, this was just a joke. But Eddie, just to provoke you as an European, why do Ugandan needs a European movement like Slow Food to change their food habits? Thank you.
Eddie, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Actually, I can take on that question directly and also respond to some of the queries which Malte had. First of all, Slow Food might have been born in Europe as an association, as a movement, but the idea behind Slow Food is a global need. It's everywhere. Nobody can come and convince us that Africans, we don't need to preserve our biodiversity. We need it. I was doing this kind of work before Slow Food, but Slow Food is a huge platform where you can have, is the right platform where you can have the voices of the common people being heard. I'm here talking to the world through this talk. It's because of Slow Food, and also I'm representing the voices of the people who are working in these communities. It's a connecting factor. It's not the neo-colonialistic kind of organization that dictates and tells you what to do from the European point of view, but it's an organization, it's a platform, it's a movement where you bring up your local initiatives and share with the world. We have a beautiful network called Terra Madre. There are so many people doing a lot of great things, but their voices cannot be heard. Their voices are down there. The governments are not listening to them. The other organizations which would support their efforts are not listening to them. But being part of Terra Madre, being part of Slow Food is one way to convey the voice and show the world that this is the work we are doing. There are thousands of small garden projects which are being done, and these are not created by Slow Food. They are created by African communities, and Slow Food is connecting to make sure that we break the neo-colonialistic or the colonial barriers which were created in terms of boundaries, in terms of hiding information, because one of the typical way Africa was colonized was scrambling and partition of the continent, and also trying to create these boundaries to break communication. But through platforms like Slow Food and many other movements which exist there, they might have been born somewhere else. They might, like Via Campesina might have been born in Latin America, but also works in Africa, in Southeast Asia as a platform. Slow Food works also as a platform where we come and air our views and also share our work with the world and get the world motivated that something is happening in Africa. So that is the beauty of Slow Food. That is the beauty of Terra Madre. That is the beauty of being part of such a food movement. Otherwise, many women are doing great things. Many pastoralists in Africa are trying to preserve the indigenous breeds and fight with the Frisian, which came from Netherlands. And it was brought by the European organizations because they determine and define what development is. So many governments took up this animal breed from Europe, saying that it will produce more milk and then the communities will develop. But again, it's a disaster. So communities are trying to change and protect the local indigenous breeds, but this would be an uphill task without a platform where they could share knowledge and get more expert knowledge. A platform like Slow Food, like Terra Madre, where we have the presidia talking to each other, we have experts exchanging ideas and coming to the communities to meet the local people. Another thing that is briefly about why we Africans are part of this great food movement. That is one reason, but it doesn't mean that Slow Food as an association has started all the activities we work with. We are part of Slow Food, and we create, as grassroots Africans, we create many initiatives, and Slow Food gives us a facilitating platform where we can share the knowledge and ideas, where we can talk to the North, because we believe in the North-South cooperation, East-West cooperation, and North-South, South-East, East, West-West, like that. This is the spirit of Slow Food. I will stop there at that, but also I want to respond to why I said the food system. There is a reason why the food system, like you said, it was a term which was coined. Yes, it might be a term that was coined, but again, we need to appreciate the fact that food, when it comes to handling food or talking about food or producing, consuming, distribution of food, there are so many interrelated realities. And talking about a system, we are also bringing up about these interrelated realities, the complexities of handling food, the complexities of bringing food to the table. Otherwise, saying food system, it saves us from looking at, me, I prefer calling it a food system other than looking at this linear cycle of production. Cut down a forest, plant seeds, spray with chemicals, put the food on the truck, take it to the supermarket, take it to the plate, let the waste be waste. So that is the linear and kind of cycle of production. But talking about a system, we also mean the cultural aspects which are connected to food production, the environmental aspects which are connected to food production, talking about the land, the social justice, the environmental justice, the economic justice, which is involved, should be involved in the production of food. It's a kind of a system. It's a kind of a reality with a lot of interconnected activities and players working together. And I do not agree with that, with just looking at food production as a linear cycle of activities, whereby you go back to the same thing, get more seeds and grow again and grow again and grow again. So, and this saves us also from the production gospel, which the production gospel, which always tells us we don't have enough food in circulation, so we need to produce more and more and more and more. Calling it a system saves us from this kind of production gospel. I don't know. I really, Malte talked about a lot of important things, which I feel like I need to respond to. Also, the kind of North-South interrelationships, yeah, the kind of European influence on the African agriculture, the kind of European influence on the agriculture of the global South, the American influence on African agriculture. There is a definition of development which is developed or coined in the West, whereby also the same thing goes to the definition of poverty, which is actually coined in the West, and it's imposed on the African or on the countries in the global South. In this case, there are development indices which are actually dictated maybe by the World Bank, and African countries have to follow these development figures. So many of them, the African countries, to catch up with these development figures, they need to disorganize indigenous communities and then go into mass production, or they need to go into importing in exotic breeds or exotic seeds such that they can be considered developed. But this is wrong. This is also an influence, which I talked about earlier. Many of the policies are developed by under the influence of the European or American, or what I can call the Western corporations. They finance this, they finance agriculture, they finance agricultural research, because they want to shift the agricultural system or the African agriculture towards their favorite playground. So there is quite a lot of complexity in this, but also we are doing a lot of grassroots work to check on this. We watch this, and also we are acting to stop and challenge this kind of influence, and give the land back to the Africans, and also give the seeds back to the Africans, and the right to produce food back to the Africans.
Thank you so much, Eddie. We have some interesting comments or questions that are already written here in our chat. I would like to try to put some order there. I see on the one side questions or comments, reflections that concern what I would call the power or the economic fight between the values of slow food and precisely the kind of food systems that you just described, Eddie, which are dominated by economic interests that come from the West mainly. Not exclusively, because as a footnote, I just read yesterday that the 50% of the genomes, so the technology applied to genetically modified organisms, 50% of the patents on genomes, which means the intellectual property of that technology, comes from China. So do not blame only the West, that's what I mean, because the trend is coming also from another direction. But again, all this is part of that power of that economic fight, where slow food obviously is trying to fight with different values as the strategies that you all mentioned. This is where Esther's comment comes into the picture, because she wonders if really all the people will really have access one day to fair food systems, basically. And you explain what are the strategies that are being put in place. But then on the other side, also, we have the positive, constructive side of advocacy, fighting against bad advertising, as Professor Passa just mentioned in one of the comments, where probably we can influence consumers' mindsets and try to change in a positive way the food systems that are in place, which are dominated by the Western, quote unquote, sort of policies. So between these two, the fight and the positive policies, where are we? Are we on a good trend? Do you think that, I don't know, by 2030, to take the Agenda 2030 of the SDGs as a goal, or maybe next generation, my grandchildren, will they eat better? Will they have access to better food? Will they enjoy something of the educational initiatives that are being put in place? Or is it too early because of the economic power that are dominating the food systems? I would like just to pick your brains, Nina, of course, also, and Malte, and whoever would like to. I don't know if you have an answer, probably not, but that doesn't matter.
Well, jumping to the more national level, I perhaps have one. So I think that there are in Europe, not only in Germany, and I'm sure there's similar developments in Africa, but I let Eddie point this out. But in Europe, for sure, we do have developments that will, in my opinion, bring about positive change within the next 8 to 10 years. Like in Germany, and I know that there are other countries. Denmark is a good example. All northern countries. I don't know about Switzerland. I'm sorry. But they all have food strategies and really try to change people's diets and to educate better in schools, but also in canteens, and to introduce more ecologically grown food and freshly cooked food in canteens, so that children who do not know that, perhaps from their parents, makes the experience that this is good and actually better food. And Slow Food and many others, of course, have fought for that, that this takes place, and we continue to do that. To the question, well, of course, the whole international community is not able to really make sure that SDG 2 is implemented, and that hunger finishes in the world. And I believe in the power of slow food, but at a global scale, I don't think that we will, of course, advocate for it and fight for it. But of course, we're not strong enough for that. But this for all, this also plays at the national level. And for instance, one problem we're having in Germany is the true costs and true prices. This means that we have all these external costs of food production, which are not in the price of the food in the supermarket or wherever you will buy it, or at the bakery or wherever. And we want this to change. And of course, this brings about a social justice question. So when we advocate higher prices, we will always advocate at the same time that social contributions to the poor in our country have to rise as well when food prices rise. So and I think that we can do something for the poor in our country and in each country, and try to do something at the global level. But yeah, we have to be realistic about the hunger objective, which is very sad. And yeah, but it is as it is. We're not strong enough.
Thank you, Nina. Indeed, yes, social justice is not strong enough altogether. It's not only slow food, it's bigger than that. I have an interesting question from Professor Liparsa. Does Slow Food Initiative tackle food waste, food safety, and food pricing also? I think it is among the activities of Slow Food. Is that correct, Eddie or Nina?
Well,
Who would like to address that? Nina, maybe, yes?
Yeah. Well, we address food waste at the EU level and also at national level. I don't know about the global level, Eddie, you know perhaps, but we certainly do. It's part of the, you will, for instance, it's also part of the planetary diet. You will not reach this goal to feed the world, even if we all eat less and all eat more plants and less meat. Still, we need to tackle food waste.
Yep. And at the global level, the food waste campaign is championed by the Slow Food Youth Network, which is a network of young people. And there are many different ways, but one of the most concrete ways through what we call the disco soup. This is where young people organize global events and campaigns to create awareness about the dangers of food waste on the environment, on the climate, and also on the socio-economic aspects of the communities where food is grown, where food is distributed, or in families where food is eaten. As well as educating young people about ways to stop food waste. And this also involves collecting what the main market thinks is not perfect for sale, collect it together, cook and eat, and also talk about these issues. And this is at the global level. And the next food, this World Disco Soup Day, Slow Food has created a World Disco Soup Day, the day in April, where we raise awareness about food waste to our global slow food world. The next one is in April. So it's an important topic, which we believe needs a lot of attention. Also through campaigns like Food for Change, where we link climate change with food waste to climate change, and also our consumption behaviors to climate change is another way through which slow food tackles food waste. But also there is another important thing which we do, especially here in Africa. There is food waste, but also there is food loss. So where a lot of food doesn't actually reach the plates, almost 40% of the food produced on African farms doesn't reach the plate. So we are also working through the slow food gardens, the communities, to address the issue of post-harvest handling, how food should be handled, and such that we prevent this wastage and loss, to increase the percentage of food that reaches the plates from the production level. So that is how we handle that.
Yeah, Professor Passa, you wanted to ask.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for this. The reason I mentioned the issue of food waste and food safety, one of my recent PhD graduates did his PhD on grain storage system in Nigeria. And what we found was a great deal of the produce, the product, farm product, was lost due to bad storage system. Much of it was eaten by rodents, much of it got wet due to climatic conditions, went off, and a lot of it through drying, for example, and picking up was also contaminated by animal waste and other things. So that's the solution he was putting forward, my student, was to create a community-based proper storage system that the farmers, small farmers, can actually through cooperative or some other net community-based system, store their farm produce, whatever it was, in a safe manner, then cut the middleman in order to get the real price for their food. And that would lead to significant, say, reduction of food waste.
Eddie, you would like to comment on that? Is it?
Yes, very quickly. And
may I just jump in? Or is it, no, excuse me.
Yeah, Eddie, please, go ahead.
Okay, this is a very good submission from Professor Ali. These are actually some of the challenges which we are addressing. I will give also examples in Uganda, where we came in through the different communities to address issues of coffee storage, to improve the quality and also to prevent the loss, and also improve the returns to the farmers by improving the way coffee is stored and the way coffee is processed at the farm level. But also another important thing is about small grains like millet and sesame or simsim. In northern Uganda, in the districts of Gulu, Lira, there is a lot of production of simsim, but during the rain season, the next rain season, you see a lot of simsim growing on the roadsides. New plants which were not planted, but the wind and the water took it from the fields and the farms and put it on the roadsides. So we have set up 5 pilot communities where we are training on food safety to prevent the aflatoxins in small grains, and also improve the storage and drying facilities of the farmers, but working together with them and innovate and improve the ways how they work with the small grains. The same thing with the sand in millet in eastern part of Uganda. So trying to see that the food is clean without sand, without contaminants. This is there is a lot of community work that is involved also in terms of education and mindset change in the communities.
Thank you, Eddie. I would like to jump to other questions and comments because otherwise we can spend many hours here. But Gesh, some minutes ago, had an interesting remark. How would you avoid slow food to becoming a marketing slogan, particularly because it is not a protected sort of trademark? So that's one question. The second one also that was rather a comment more than a question from Irene Nagudi that I would like to welcome here very particularly because Irene is one of our mentees of Greycells. She is a part of the program Change Makers of the Kofi Annan Foundation, and Greycells is mentoring that program. It's our intergenerational component that comes in there. And Irene has a beautiful project in Uganda that is really wonderful, a wonderful implementation of the values of slow food. Another remark and question was made by Cecile and then supported by Federica regarding the role of the private sector. More and more private firms are becoming slowly, but they are becoming aware of the importance of biodiversity, healthy food, and so on. So is slow food cooperating with the private sector that is willing to join the values of slow food? And if so, how is it done? I will just flag these questions. It's up to you, anybody, to comment or reply. Before then, I will give the floor after your replies to Alejandro for some concluding remarks. The floor is open.
Maybe I just would point out
Malte,
one or two things, because again, I can't speak for slow food. But I would like to point out about the private sector, because when I was talking about, let's say, the harmful influence of large-scale corporations, this was not a general remark on the private sector, because I think there's no human life without the private sector. It's rather a question of power that I had, and of also negative and dire influence of certain types of enterprises. And this is something what we have to be very aware of. And for example, we, HEX, the Swiss Church, we are cooperating with private sector in many ways, because we think they have a very great deal of influence of making the world a better place. So we can also rely on that. But let me answer still your question, Manuela, about the future of food systems, because I think that's a very, very interesting question. And I would like only to make a point. I'm an optimist, but I would say that the situation is going to deteriorate still in the future. And especially the food divide is going to be bigger in the future than maybe even today. So you will have parts of the society that are vegans, vegetarians, organic, and so on and so on. But you will have a lot of parts of the society worldwide that are absolutely based on junk food and very cheap food. So I think this is not going to change very, very soon, because it has a lot to do with mindsets, but also with these political questions. And at the moment, I see rather a development into the wrong direction. And hopefully, and this is my last remark towards slow food. I think slow food is a very interesting actor, but, and this is just provoking, I think it's more interesting for us Westerners, because it is very much about changing our way that we export the whole food questions. And I think that in the countries that are not Westernized, it can have a helpful influence, but at the end, grassroots movements are maybe the future that need to be supported in any way, and not under the label of slow food or whatsoever. So this would be maybe my last remark. Thank you.
I really have to protest on that one. We even have a huge indigenous network, and it is very much grassroots. But just very quickly on the question of is slow food as a brand in danger? Well, there are two aspects. Actually, we are a trademark, a protected trademark. What you see here is the logo with the snail and slow food. This is our trademark, and it is protected. But slow food is also, and I find this interesting, it has been analyzed as a mega trend. And of course, people say slow food, and we are happy when they say slow food. It means the right thing. And we're not happy when they just do some superficial regional procurement and call their restaurant slow food restaurant or something like that. So it's a mixed bag, that one. Yes, but I think we should come to an end now.
Maybe my last remarks still.
Please, Eddie.
I will go back to the provocative statement by Malte of saying that slow food is more interesting for the European or Western world, but also I have to put it on the other side that it's also a way of defending the non-Westernized countries like global South countries from the Western influence, because putting together these voices. I've worked in the African civil society space for so long. I've worked with the African communities for more than 15 years, and I've worked in more than 30 African countries. I've seen how vulnerable the local indigenous organizations, the local indigenous networks, how the corporations weaken them through the government policies, how they weaken them through the economic sabotage, how they weaken them through bringing all sorts of injustices We need a voice, we need a platform, we need a global movement where we can put our views, where we can air our views. And Slow Food is one of these brands, these platforms, whereby even at the European Union level, we can talk and they listen. At the African Union level, we can talk and listen. But so many African or local indigenous networks are weakened because they are there doing something in isolation and they don't have this kind of platform. That's why Slow Food has moved from being only based on individual membership to a community kind of arrangement where all the networks can come and be part of the movement, be part of the work. It's no longer the old association where you had to only subscribe to a European membership style, but also African communities which do not have the money to pay, but they do something to save biodiversity, to save the knowledge. They can have a platform and share the knowledge and share the space. This is what we need. It's not about working in isolation or working with a European founded organization. It's about being empowered to have the voice come out for the local communities and to talk to those with power.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Alejandro, the floor is yours because we have
Alejandro,
to conclude.
Manuela, may I just invite Eddie? May I put you in contact with the HEX country director of Uganda and see the potential of Slow Food in working in Bidi refugee camp in northern Uganda? This would be very interesting for me to see how can we combine our efforts in really working with the most vulnerable and the most poor. Can I do that?
Exactly. Please do that.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much to all of you. This was really a very fascinating session. I'm sure this would not be the first time that we have a second session on the same topic. I think we have so many, to me, unanswered questions and issues to develop. I must confess that when I see groups and initiatives that tackle so high objectives, I always prepare myself to hear more an idealistic speech. And I thought your presentation were extremely realistic. You have identified the challenges, you have identified the adversaries or the forces that are working against slow food. So I found that really very, very interesting. There are 2 points that were not touched or were touched in a indirect way that I would just like to flag them, and possibly we can address them in another session. And this is something that sometimes I was criticized myself when I work in United Nations at the ILO, and they said, well, what you are doing in my field, which was social protection, is something that works only in a small scale. And you ILO people, you are the champions of pilot programs, and you've opened a pilot program all over the world. But how do you scale this up so that you really have an impact? Scaling up, it is full of challenges. And also the other thing which is linked to this is we know that most people in the world live in the informal economy, with informal salaries, with very tight budgets. When we analyze the income expenditure pattern in the informal economy, we see that food is actually not a choice. You have to pay for shelter, you have to pay for water, you have to pay for electricity, you have to pay for transportation. What is left is possibly for food, and you want to be filled, not necessarily. And in many cases, not a matter of choice. And in many cases, you're not as close. I heard the word community several places. I understood that it would be, in my imagination, were small communities. I come from a city with 25 million people. To see a tree and the rural area, you really have to go outside 2.5 hours or 3 hours outside of the city. So you're not in contact with a small community. You're in an informal urban sector in access to the market and with very limited things. So I will just add that I fully agree with what Marta said about the pizzatization, McDonaldization, Westernization, but also a very scary trend is also that this is accompanied what many economists mentioned as precarization. Most of the work in the world is become precarious, and income has become precarious, and that has a direct impact in our choices. So I think really, thank you very much. This was really very motivating session. I'm sure it will be followed many, many times in our YouTube channel. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. We already have requests to continue the contact. And thank you very much, and good luck with your endeavors. Thank you to all the participants, and goodbye. See you in the next Greytalk. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you for the initiative and the moderation, Manuela. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, Eddie.
Bye.
Talk
I
to
will
you.
see your email.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Nina.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.